Welcome to Beauties and Beasties, the independent pest podcast for the UK. Good evening.
How are you?
Now then. How are we?
Yeah. Now then, how's life?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Ticking along, looking a bit rough tonight.
Well, didn't want to say it.
Run out of razor blades.
Yeah.
I see your internet connection shit again.
I'm going to get an Ethernet cable to take us down there. But the reason why there is only me and Hugh tonight is Alex is no longer with the podcast. He put a post up.
Really?
Yeah, and he's had a shit ton of abuse over it, and he's decided to leave.
For real?
No, is he shit? No, he's just got food poisoning. He had something funny today that's made him poorly, but I bet there's people sitting watching this back thinking, fucking hell, like Alex is gone now.
Was that battered kebab, was it?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, I saw that. Exactly. I saw that today. Somebody did a battered kebab. It's like,
yeah. How's your week been?
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's been a bit quiet again.
Why are you wearing a tank top?
Why not?
Big gear.
Goes with my string vest, mate.
It's a bit weird. I've never seen you in a tank top.
Clearly, you never had anything to do with the skinhead era.
No. Mate. This is not like my choice. This is forced upon me. I wish I had, flowing locks, but no longer. Although I always tell people I haven't lost any hair at all. I've lost zero hair. In fact, I have more hair now than I've ever had. It's just not on my head. It's on my back, in my ears, up my nose, like fucking all over in it.
You can't remember the 2-finger button downs then?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, there you go. Got no fucking taste, have you?
No, not a drop. No.
Still wear trackies and trainers.
What have you done this week quickly?
What have we done? We've been ticking along. We've been on the bed bugs. Got some rat jobs to come in. The guys have been forging forward. So yeah, we haven't been too bad at all, really. I'm not going to mention any bees. Oh, I said it.
Well, the bees are going good over. This weather's knocked them back. No, this weather's knocked them back, and I do wonder whether it'll have effect on other insects. Well,
you say that though, because we've done more wasp nests this year so far than we've ever done any year.
Really?
Thank you, Stuart. Get that internet sorted out, Sean. Stuart noticed it. Everybody else noticed it.
Listen, I'm going to buy a big long cable, and I'm going to sort it out. Yeah, I will do.
Otherwise,
seeing as my internet's rubbish, which is annoying because I've actually got 5 bars on my computer and 1 bar on the apps. I don't understand why that's happening.
No idea, because it should be in 1080.
Here's a question for you quickly. How many pest controllers do you think bought FireCam and are still using FireCam this year? Be honest. I think it's loads. Yeah.
Absolutely tons.
Yeah.
We haven't used any Vulcan yet because they've been so small. We've been able to just take them away.
We've done a couple with Vulcan and air bricks and stuff like that. And we've just given it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't want me using FireCam where I would have used a tablespoon. So now I'm using like half a kilo.
Half a kilo.
I'm not as good, you know what I mean?
No, but that did well on fucking cutting down pesticides usage, didn't it?
Oh yeah, exactly.
They're gonna have to come out with a nozzle that goes all ways for dust, aren't they?
Absolutely. I've been talking about this for ages. So you can put it into an air brick and just give it a good 360 round.
Yeah.
Get that void filled. I think that's absolutely what's got to happen. But there we go. They do exist, but they're too wide, aren't they? They're about 10, 12 mil wide or something like that. We need a 6 mil wide one. Although Vulcan will be a pig for blocking in that one. So let's see. Someone will work something out. I just can't be bothered. So
yes. Well, Rupert's right. The callback time is more for Vulcan, isn't it? Because you get the larvae hatching out, and because it hasn't knocked the fuck out. It hasn't knocked. Oh, I did it this week. It hasn't knocked them out, so they wake up, and there's not a great residual.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Yeah, but let's stop talking insects, because this is a sort of like my guest this week, isn't it? He's not like an insect guest.
Now, I was talking to somebody about today's guest and about drones, and they were saying that they had a drone manufacturer come in, and they were saying that the problem that they're getting with defense drones is that they can only, once they're made, they can only keep them on the shelves for so long before the enemy find the frequency to block the drone signal. So they're actually coming up with a very small fiber optic cable, like tiny, like a hair, that will go from the controller to the drone, even if it travels 2 miles away. So they can't block the signal. So we'll ask if it might be, don't know, might know, might not. So,
well, I don't know much about hair, so let's get someone who does. Here we go. On comes Ollie.
Evening, Sean. Evening, Hugh.
And come on then, who's Ollie?
From me?
Tell us about Ollie. Yeah.
So I'm Ollie Smith. I'm from WildTrackPro, which is a company I formed with my business partner probably about 2.5 years ago. But it was an extension of work that we've been doing for, I would say, ultimately we've been doing for 15 to 20 years, predominantly in much larger pests than the normal ones that you deal with. So we've been involved in deer management, squirrel management for 20 odd years, primarily doing it for national charities and research bodies and things like that. We were spending years and years and hours and hours and hours and hours each year doing spreadsheets and making all of these return forms for the government and these different people. So we turned it into software. And about 2.5 years ago, we launched it to the general deer management industry, and we're now bringing it across towards the pest control industry. But we have, I would say, 4 business lines. We do the software, we do the drones, which we were talking about before, and I'll come on to you. They're using those in Ukraine quite a lot, the fly-by-wire drones with a fiber optic cable, because it's any frequency that can be jammed, essentially. Any of that frequency range. So we've been using drones for wildlife surveys, thermal drones.
How come they must have had a bloody long wire to go from Ukraine to Russia?
No, that wasn't fiber optic fly by wire. But that's one of the beauty of that operation, and it's really interesting that the stealth operation, because
we went off a bit. Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, I mean it's an interesting one. It's possibly more interesting than our zoological surveys and things like that. So we've got 4 business lines. We do software, we do ecological surveys, which includes drone surveys, zoological surveys, impact assessments, that sort of thing. We do training, and we actually do the work itself in terms of wildlife management. So it's at one end of pest control. I think Alex described pest control as a bunch of industries all joined together by rats and mice, and we probably sit right at one end of that, where we do We deal primarily with deer, but we also deal with foxes, and then down towards your squirrels and things like that, both urban and rural. And one of the big things that's really interesting, I was just on the phone with one of the guys from the Forestry Commission I was talking about. We just received them another booking for urban deer management, because it's becoming something. We're getting 5, 6, 7 bookings a year to go into the city centre and deal with deer in the city centre. So it's becoming much more a part of the pest control sphere than necessarily what you'd call that sort of rural wildlife management sphere.
I can see Sean's looking. So
yeah,
Thinking.
yeah. One I wanted to hear about this stealth fucking thing that they did in Russia, because I was proper interested in that. How did they get that many drones into that many places to blow up that many planes? How did they do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, fundamentally, their intelligence teams are exceptional, and they managed to get those crates in there. And then it's a case of where they opened up, and then the drones were then flown. There's a couple of we're bringing a drone. So I didn't mention, we've got a 5th business stream, which is where we've designed and had a drone manufactured specifically for wildlife surveys, which because there isn't one out there. You can buy the DJI, and it's got a lot of, you need a commercial drone, but the DJI's got loads of extra things that you don't need for doing wildlife. So we've built a specific wildlife one, but that has the ability to be flown via 4G. So essentially, you don't need that radio connection. So anywhere that you can, as long as it's got a phone signal, it can then piggyback off the phone network. And so you could fly it 4,000 miles away. You could fly it in Australia, in theory. The global latency, global sort of the latency to send a message from the UK to Australia, you're talking about hundreds and maybe thousands of milliseconds, but that's a second. So you're talking seconds of delay, which is more than enough to get a drone up in the air. You know where you're going. It's going to have that in the GPS coordinates. So you're just flying it to that GPS place and flying it into something. So it's incredibly smart execution. I don't believe they've used AI to do it. You could have done it with AI. You could have flown them separately. And I have some stuff that will fly drones from a computer. But I think they've probably just done it with 4G and just flown over 4G. At the beginning of the war, remember they're using Starlink a lot, which is not vastly dissimilar. Everyone thinks that mobile phones, they're all radios. They're all two-way radios. That's all they are. Mobile phones, internet, all of that, Bluetooth, all the same thing, all identical, all works the same way. And so they've at the beginning of the war, they were using the cell network a lot, and there's full cell coverage in Russia. And all you need to do is have a SIM card that works in Russia, which is not difficult to acquire. And then I would have flown it over 4G. That's how I would have done it. But
so if they would literally have to take down the 4G network to prevent that happening.
Yeah.
Which isn't going to happen, is it? Because they're all using phones anyway, aren't they? Rather than your
business, your entire business communications infrastructure is how your country runs now. You can't work without mobile. So that's the only defense against it. Yeah. And
they're using mobile phones on the front line anyway, aren't they, to call in artillery rather than...
They were. There was a strong period where they were taking out, and I mean, I don't want to give the impression of being an expert in Ukraine.
Oh, no, it's just...
I know a few people over.
Come on, then, we've wanted an expert on Ukraine on here for ages, so go.
Genuinely. But they would, if you look at some of the early attacks, they were taking out 4G towers. 4G was an important part of the communications infrastructure, and there was people taking them out. So, there is 4G on the battlefield. They're tending to use Starlink, and if you look over in the States, they've got Starlink on mobile now. So they're using that. T-Mobile have released it. It won't be long before it's here. It's always been a possibility. Like there was nothing. Well, I'll give you a little bit of background. So I used to I moved back to the UK from New Zealand in 2019. I look like the father trouble. And in New Zealand, I worked for a company called Track Plus, and we did multi-network communication systems for militaries and the police, and when I say the police, I mean like California Highway Patrol and the Chilean military and people like that. And that was all based off sat cell communication networks and aviation stuff. So I did a lot of work with drones back then when I was working for them. We sold that in the middle of COVID, which was great. And then I got stuck in New Zealand and had to migrate my way back across the world during the lockdowns. Some of the most bizarre experiences I've ever had.
It's not a bad place to be stuck in lockdown, though, is it? New Zealand?
Oh, stunning. Yeah, I mean, I was there for a couple of years. I mean, because New Zealand didn't have any cases, and then it came out of lockdown, and that was fantastic. So it opened up, and we were all just, so when it went into lockdown, so in COVID, I think it was in 2019, my Google Maps tracking thing said I did 6.8 times around the world in 2019, like to all these different, because it was a great software product we had that did these communication systems, but we only had one customer per country. So you had to go and see a customer in in the States it was different because you had a few customers, but you'd go to Chile and then you'd fly to Brazil and then you'd fly over to the Philippines and then you'd be, so 6.8 times around the world in 2019. In January 20, I did 1.5 times around the world. And then I think in February, it was another 1.5 times. And then in March, it became, let's say 600 kilometers. And then in April, it was 400 meters from my flat to the office and back again. And that was it. And but because we did all the flying doctors, we had an exemption. So I used to go into the office and sit on the top of the comms tower in Dunedin in New Zealand, watching people get arrested by the New Zealand police, which was absolutely hilarious. Like, so this kid juggling on the lawn outside, like these students had all come out, and the police car just screams up next to them. These two policemen run out and just nail him, just smack him to the ground. And everyone's going, "Whoa!" And they're like, no. They didn't mess around in New Zealand.
That horrible offence of juggling in public.
Juggling in public. Deserves it. Massive, great Maori New Zealand policeman hitting him with 16 stone at full speed was awesome to watch off the roof. But yeah, so it was a good place to be in lockdown. We came out of lockdown. That was great. Yeah. And then we went back into lockdown because some English people turned up and then couldn't be asked waiting for quarantine, escaped over the fence of the hotel in Auckland, flew down to Invercargill, and then infected everyone with COVID. So that was just absolutely fantastic as we were leading the way again. But yeah, so I came back from that back to the UK, and then because we'd sold that tracking business, I was conflicted out of doing any geolocation type stuff. So it took me a couple of years to get back in and then start WildTrackPro.
Why? Why do you think? What makes you suddenly think I will start a wild, an animal tracking app and just like that?
So I've been the guy I started with at Dean. We'd been doing similar things for about 20 years in terms of the deer management side of things. So we'd started off, we were doing some research. We were on some research ground for the Forestry Commission doing deer management research. We had to record these Word forms, which took forever to write. And gradually we transitioned that into Google Forms, and then we were using WhatsApp. And then we built the application just to make our lives easier. But then there was a few grant schemes launched, and so we brought it out to the public, and then general adoption came up. More and more people needed the reporting systems, and then
why?
It's a long story with deer management, which is a very specific one. The short reason that they needed it was the government is paying you money to control deer and squirrels. There's a grant scheme there, and in order to get that money, You need to record the hours that you are doing on the ground and where you're doing it, and you also need to record what animals you're taking and seeing. And
wasn't it just easier when we chopped off squirrels' tails and took them to the police station?
I mean, those were good days back in the 50 pence days. Well, it was 20 pence, I think, when it started, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, but I mean, you know, so if we come, I mean, I've sort of touched on why. Personally, why you can't manage what you can't measure. So we haven't been measuring particularly well. I can talk about the squirrel and deer sort of, you know, why there's grants. Why are there grants? Because those populations of both of those species are massively out of control, massively out of control. And the reasons for them being out of control is that management has been poor to horrifically poor over the past 30 to 40 years. And the reason it's been poor to horrifically poor is because there hasn't been the correct incentives or structures in place to manage it properly. And there hasn't been the data there to make informed database decisions on what's going on. So,
but does that not come back to the shift in mindset and the shift in people's opinions towards them, which is why the appetite hasn't been there or not?
What do you mean? Would you mean for deer or for squirrels or
both? I just think we're getting soft as a country, aren't we? Like, if it's cute and fluffy, no matter what it does, they don't like you killing it, don't they? It could, like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, there is a bit of that, but I would say that the attitude to deer management. So go 10, 15 years ago, when we were managing deer for a national charity. Let's just say that we used to have to pretend to be managing squirrels because it was
RSPCA
squirrels
for the RSPCA.
I will leave national charity as the
RSPCA and the RSPB in it. They do it. They kill loads of. They do though, don't they? And this is the problem we get into, where we're not allowed to see it. But you go to an RSPB reserve and the blackbirds, you know, your crows, your corbies, the black them like they're going out of fashion, the black and foxes, the black all sorts, don't they? They can't help themselves, but then they complain, you know, because gamekeepers are doing it, and you're like, it's the most two-faced thing I've ever seen in my life.
So, I mean, you get yes, I agree. There's definitely a lot of people that are a lot of people in those organizations that are not necessarily two-faced about it, but that are anti-shooting anything. There's plenty of people in the organizations that are reasonably informed about managing stuff. And fundamentally, you know, my academic background's in zoology, ecology, deer, that sort of thing. I've got a couple of other degrees, but the main stuff I've done is in zoology, ecology. There is a reason. There are a group of them that understand that we live in an entirely managed landscape. You know, fundamentally, the UK has been managed for millennia. You know, it's not like it's been managed the last 100 years or even the last 1,000. It's been several thousand years. You know, it's a small island that people have been managing for that long. We don't have any predators. We have limited predators. In a landscape like that, there is a requirement to have ongoing management. And when I say management, I am using it as a euphemism, and I talk about this in a couple of articles that I've written recently. It's a couple of bits and bobs, but the simple thing is that we need lethal control. When I'm talking about management, I'm talking about lethal control. And there is a necessity for that because there isn't anything that's going to perform the function of either apex predators and in some cases the mid-sized predators. So there is a need to manage those species. And I think that any sensible ecologist or zoologist will actually probably agree with that. Well, most of them would do. You'd be amazed at where people get to in this cycle. There's a lot of noise about the people that say no, because they make the loudest noise, if you know what I mean. There are many academics and many
like vegans.
Yes, yeah, like vegans
Can't help but open their mouth. They've got to, force it down everybody's face.
Right. It's like an ex-smoker. The loudest person's the ex-smoker. The one that shouts. It's the person with the strongest opinion.
Can we go back to you said that there is a grant for culling squirrels?
There is, yeah.
Who would get that sort of grant?
WS3, or the new version, CWS3, which is available under the Countryside Stewardship Higher Tier Woodland Improvement WD2 option, is available to millionaires. It's available to landowners that have woodland in a Countryside Stewardship Higher Tier scheme, and then it's an option that they can take. Pays £65 a hectare, which is quite a lot of money, actually, when you think about it. We've just been, I've had a nightmare day doing RPA submission, Rural Payment Agency submissions today, which has been a pain in the ass dealing with their queries for a lot of clients. But it was summarised nicely by a gamekeeper / pest controller / gardener who works on one of the estates, who went, "We were sold this grant as woodland improvement, but it's not. It's a deer and squirrel killing grant, isn't it?" And I went, "Yes, that's it. Fundamentally, this grant is for the control of deer and squirrels." So it's £65 a hectare for squirrels, £105 a hectare for deer, and the remaining balances take it up to £292 a hectare. So if you imagine 100 hectare wood, you're clearing a substantial amount of money. And that's every year. Every year for 10 years. Yeah.
And then, so the app then helps you demonstrate that you're actually doing it, does it?
You basically, you work it like you would any other app. You basically go on, you tap in pins to say where you are, what you're doing. You've got little QR codes that go on your traps. So you scan those traps and it makes sure that you don't lose them in the woods. It also keeps your inspection record for the traps. It submits your annual cull returns for both species, and it also, you've got the stuff in there for doing ecological impact assessments. So you can wander around and do your ecological impact assessments on the app, and it spits out the form with all the scores and all of the ecology done for you and all the maths done in the background for you.
The scores on the doors.
Yeah.
So you don't actually necessarily have to cull anything then to get your grant.
No, you do. So you submit a squirrel. You submit a squirrel. You need to submit an annual cull return. So you need to
zero.
Zero will get you. That's what I've been dealing with today. Is people that have gone, is 7 acceptable for my £40,000? No, 7's not going to get you there. But I mean, this is a big. It's a very interesting grant. Whoever created the grant, I've said this a few times. I've been on a few different deer things talking about the grant. Whoever designed the grant designed it really, really well. And
wow!
It's not been implemented quite so well. So the way that they designed it was basically there was a 3-tier system on it, on the money. You had to achieve your damage scores reducing. So your damage had to come down. If people ask, you can go to our website and there's a little article about the grant, and then you can then follow that through to the government links. It is only available in England and Wales, and there's no deer in Wales. So, well, there is deer in Wales. I'm being facetious, but it's only England and Wales. There are other things in Scotland. So it's well designed because you've got to get your damage down, which is essentially your cash incentive. That's your ultimate aim, is to reduce the damage, to get your natural regeneration, to sequester carbon, to do all the other things, get trees growing. You've got to hit your cull plan. So you're given a cull target that you've got to then hit, which is usually created by you anyway. You write a deer management plan, or the forester does. And you've got to do your hours. So you've got the hours, you've got the culls, and you've got the damage. So that should encapsulate that you're actually doing the job properly. So it's actually quite well designed, but a lot of people are just completely unprepared for the amount of hours that have to go in. So one of the additional services that we've had to offer people is supplementing their hours on deer culling or squirrel culling. It's less of a problem on squirrels because squirrels is less rigorously tracked in terms of hours. It's less hours as well. But on the deer, you're looking at 3 hours per hectare of woodland. So that 100-hectare woodland that I talked about earlier, you're looking at 300 hours in a year. Now our data, which goes back in terms of stalking data, goes back 15 years. We know that the average recreational or vocational stalker, the guy that has a rifle and does it for a hobby, does 30 hours a year. The average one does 30 hours a year. The keenest of them do 50 to 70. And everyone disputes that. They always go, oh, I've done loads more than that. I do loads more than that. When we step back and actually work through it, they realize that's correct. In fact, the head of deer for Basque, Martin Edwards, he disputed my numbers quite heavily and then came back a year later and went, oh, you were right. I did 60 hours last year. So it's very difficult for those 300 hours to be done by recreational stalkers. It has to be, they're looking for professional deer control. That's fundamentally what they're looking for. Or recreational stalkers have to do, there has to be more of them doing more. And that would be what I would hope would happen, because there isn't enough professional guns in the country to get anywhere near to the type of hours that we need to do.
Well, you might not have enough guns, but I've got a couple of lurchers and I'm more than happy to go out and catch deer. Is that okay?
Yeah, that one might be quite interesting.
Yeah, I could video it and put it on YouTube. Would that class as evidence?
Who was that who did that? Someone did that recently, wasn't it? Down in Devon, the Devon guys.
There's a guy called, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of him. He's called his tag handle or whatever you call it is Caveman Hunter, and he's from Liverpool, and he is wild. Like, I was wild as a kid. This bloke is me when I was 21 on steroids wild. He's proper crazy wild. He does stuff that he'll have a video of himself driving down the road with a bird of prey on his arm and push it out the window, smash a herring gull. Like, needless to say, yeah. I'm not even going to go into how much bad stuff I see. Needless to say, he got raided. He got all these birds, dogs, and everything taken off him not long ago. But I don't think it slowed him down. I think he's just stocked back up and he's straight back at it. He is the terrier that nobody wants to own. The one that's like, he's just nuts. Caveman Hunter. If anyone wants to Google him, he's barking, absolutely barking.
Oh, I'm gonna have a look.
Let's talk about the toys. I want to talk about the drones.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the.
Come on.
The drones we use.
Yeah.
So the drone surveying. So there's a few people who've been doing the drone surveying for a while. There's us. There's Ben Harrower from BH Wildlife, GWD, who are down south. There's a couple of people that do it reputably. But they're basically they're just drones with a powerful thermal camera on them. So you're talking about the neck end of, I think the first one that I had was about 10,000, but now you can get them for about £5,000. And they are essentially the same as the DJI ones that you see people flying around and using on YouTube, and they're the same ones that the Ukrainians are used to blow up Russian planes or anything else. China does a remarkably good line in cheap drones.
China.
The stuff you need for the wildlife surveying is a big zoom, a high-powered thermal camera, and then lots and lots of batteries, because you've got to fly around over large areas consistently for a reasonably long time. We use them twofold. So we use them for doing the surveys, and I've got this. I would say go to our YouTube channel, and there's some videos of doing thermal drone surveys for deer and how we identify sex and species and all that sort of stuff. But we literally do identify them down to the sex and the age sometimes as well. So when we do a survey, we'll be doing that. And then the other thing we use them for is when we're doing urban work with centerfire rifles. Then we'll have 2 to 3 drones as top cover. Watching out for people and other objects and any risks, things like that. So if you're doing urban pest control with centerfire or even with rimfire rifle, anything that's more powerful than an air rifle, I would say I think the drones are invaluable. We wouldn't be without them. So we'll have a couple of them up watching different areas, and then we'll have a few people watching with radios, and that'll control.
So you said the China ones are quite good, but we're obviously not going to get them from Temu, are we?
No. So the generic ones that are the two that are most commonly used at the moment are the DJI Mavic 3T or the 30T, which is the Matrice 30T. That's what we use. We are bringing our own one out, which is it's been bespoke built for us by a drone manufacturer in China, which I've got the sample. It has some enhanced capabilities over the DJI, as in the zoom is the optical zoom is 30 times versus 8 times on a like for like basis. The new drone that we've got coming is IP rated, Billy, so it can be flown in the rain, IP64, and that's one of the big upgrades over the DJI. In terms of wind speed, you can get up to about 70 kilometers an hour in it, in the wind. So it works for both urban deer management and also doing surveys in Scotland, because flying around in Scotland doing surveys, it's raining most of the time there. And that's the big, so that's the big upgrade for us, is that it's IP rated. It's got a higher zoom. It's got it's got a better thermal resolution, and it comes with 6 batteries as opposed to the standard 1 or 3. So you've got 6 batteries, which will give you about 5 hours of flight time continuous.
6 batteries in one unit.
Yeah, so you get a pellet case. You get a pellet case with 6 batteries inside it, and then you've got your drone.
I see. You still have to fly it back and change the batteries.
Yeah, you still have to fly it back and swap them over. Yeah. What's very exciting is that in about in a year or so, is we've got a smaller version with a thermal on, same thermal camera, same optical zoom, but it's only got a 20-minute flight time, but you can charge it USB-C in your car, and you can just chuck it in the air and just use it to do quick reconnaissance and stuff like that. It's no good for surveying, and it's not that good for top cover, but it's brilliant for throwing in the air and seeing what animals are in a wood.
How much are you looking at the smaller drone for?
Sorry?
How much? I'm thinking totally off the realms of anything you're thinking of. Yeah. What sort of price are we looking at a thermal small drone that can be charged up on a 20-minute run?
Thermal small drone is going to be about $1,000. But that's subject twos, if you know what I mean. That's the target price.
We use thermal cameras for the bees, don't we? But if they're up a height, the cameras that you're shooting at off the floor are no good. And I'm thinking, could we get close with a thermal drone?
Well, the thermal drone would do it, and I mean, if you've got an example, Sean, we could do a demo with their existing thermal drones now, and you can check it.
How small an object will it pick up?
Oh, so we do primarily we do deer surveys, but we do squirrel surveys with them as well. So we can count squirrels. We can count. It depends on the thermal resolution. I did an interesting job where I was proving that the earths were occupied by using the thermal. So you could see which earths were occupied and not, just by seeing the amount of thermal resolution in the entry to the earth.
So if you flew it over a waste dump,
yeah,
would you see rats below?
Depending on the thermal gradient, yeah. As long as there's a gradient between them and the waste. And the problem with waste is it's generally quite warm. So you might not get any thermal gradient. So we fly a very set methodology, which has been published in a couple of papers over in Korea, where they were doing work with Sika deer. So we tend to fly at a set height of about 110 feet. We cover 100% of the ground. We do various things based on a method statement that we've got in place. But and we found that the higher you go, the less the small objects it'll pick up. Obviously, simple logic. So if you're prepared to spend the time, then it'll pick anything up. Anything that's got a thermal gradient between it and its surroundings. So with your waste dumps, do them at night, first thing in the morning, and you might be able to see the rats clearly. And one of the big tricks is that you see it moving. That's the big thing. Is it's very easy to pick up living things with a thermal when you see them move. It'll certainly pick up rats, for example. Yeah. You'll see a lot of foxes on there as well.
I guess the other thing, you could do it for gulls as well, counting nest sites. flying them over buildings and seeing how many nest sites you've got and whether you're getting them down.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Look at that. Use thermal drones for chemical nets.
Yeah.
Found in an airport. Yeah.
So the new one that we're bringing out is going to be, I think, the two big game changers are its IP rating and the price point as well, because it's not £10,000, £5,000. It's going to be closer to about 3.5. So it's cheaper and has everything you need for wildlife without having all of the RTK modules and the other stuff that you don't need for wildlife work, pest work.
So even though it's lighter,
yeah,
because you would be any pest controller would be flying it commercially. I know nothing about drone licenses really, except for watching some twatty auditors flying them around. So anybody flying them commercially needs a license, don't they?
They do. They need a license from the CAA. But again, it's something that I think we're quite passionate about, is people getting trained and doing training properly. It doesn't cost a lot of money to do this, to get the licensing. Depending on which licenses you go for, the A2E, and if you're just flying, if you're working commercially in pest control, you're going to need to do the courses, but they're available online with exam online courses. They're only about 150 quid, I think, to do the training and the licensing.
Right.
It's just worth doing it from an interest point of view as well. Like the last thing you want to do is they're not heavy, but like if you pick one up and you're untrained and you smack it into a kid, you're not going to feel great about it. It's better to have had a bit of training and done the course. This would be my argument, and I'm sure it would be anti what the pest control industry think, but I do think there should be some kind of mandatory training for firearms, etc. Because if anyone, and that includes air rifles, because if anyone can just go and pick them up and then shoot their mate in the face, then I do think people need a bit of training before they pick up things that can hurt people. And that's I'm expecting the comments to go absolutely mad with mandatory training for air rifles. Mandatory training doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be interesting. It can be good fun as long as it doesn't cost a lot. And fundamentally, it's what's the definition of cost? If you're over in New Zealand, has a much better firearms, and bearing in mind I was there when the Christchurch incident happened, but New Zealand has a much better firearms licensing system. Where you get a license and then you can buy any firearm that you want, because it's mad that you should be limited to what firearms you can buy in the UK, because you can do as much damage with a 223 as you can a 243 as you can a 308 as you can a 22. They're not dissimilar in the amount of damage they do. But in New Zealand, everyone who has a firearms license has to attend mandatory training. So part of the application fee includes a day of training where they train everyone what to do, what safe is, how ranges work, all of that sort of thing. And there's one for you, Sean. What do you think on mandatory training for firearms or air rifles? I'll throw it back at you.
Yeah, I think the more training that we do, the better, isn't it? It's got to be, hasn't it? We should definitely. So we do send our lads on firearm on like air rifle training. There's a few firms do it in the UK. Send them on it. It's a bit of a jolly of a day out, but it's also quite nice to sort of usually mix it in quite nice with a bit of knowledge, and you get to shoot them. The only thing which annoys me is they make you shoot their air rifle, and I think, what's the point of me shooting a Bowcock 177 when I'm going to go home and shoot? Like you're better off putting that gun in that lad's hands and getting him, and if he's missing or he's out, like, get it tuned in, show him where he's going. Like, it's pointless. Like that was my only criticism of it. The rest of it, it was a really good, interesting day. I do think we should probably do a bit more in terms of writing up a risk assessment, because it's the thing that people struggle with, but it's actually the thing that will get you money and allow you that work at that time. That wasn't really sort of covered, but they never do. They just say do a risk assessment, and you're like, all right, whatever. But yeah, no, I like training, and I like compulsory training. And I think if you're going to pick something up where you could literally really hurt someone, then you should have training, shouldn't you?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it has to be compulsory for us for air rifle training, but if one of our lads that I don't know that they've had any training, I would certainly, before sending them out with an air rifle, they would sit down and we would go through it. I mean, I've been around air rifles all my life, so I as normal, I would begrudge paying somebody to train somebody when I could probably train it myself just as well. And as long as it's structured,
but
you could go on then.
This is selfish. What do you think of this? If you made it mandatory, and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but if you made it mandatory, the people who are doing 1 or 2 jobs a year wouldn't do it and wouldn't offer that service. So if you then offer it and you have it, it opens up more doors for you. It actually increases your chance of getting those jobs.
It would depend to me who's doing the training, because I'm not going to be mandatorily trained by somebody that knows less than I do.
So, I mean, I'm going to say that I am working on some stuff at the moment with a few different bodies around this type of area, around this type of conversation, I didn't really. I have the world's most bizarre CV, by the way. I'll just put that out there before I say the next bit. So I spent a bit of time in the military, like 10 years. And even the military aren't going to send anyone out without training every aspect of the firearm. And I've seen as a firearms instructor or teaching people courses, and we do a variety of and have done for a while. You know, we do a variety of training courses. I'm desperately trying to exit our training business. So if anyone wants to do any of our training courses, they are all becoming available online through the Shooting and Hunting Academy. You can just go do them there. But we teach the polar bear course. That's big pest control, that one. Which is just so basically, if you go to Svalbard or Greenland, you need to carry a rifle because polar bears will eat you. If you go out, general rules: if they come within 150 meters, you shoot them. If they come within 400 and they're moving towards you, you shoot them. And you're talking 375 Holland and Holland, or 30 or 6, and that sort of thing. So they're not small rifles. And I have seen firearms license holders with some horrific habits, like some of the worst habits I've ever seen are the people that have been shooting the longest, who've never had training. And for that reason, I don't think my personal opinion is that there should be mandatory training for having firearms at the basic level, so you can just assure yourself that someone's safe. I think it becomes a question with air rifles that's slightly lower because the risk is lower. Have you ever been shot with an air rifle, Sean or Hugh?
When I was a kid.
Yeah, when I was a kid as well.
Everybody had a gat gun, didn't they?
No, it was up at a place in. I grew up in North Northumberland, a place called Longhoughton. Sean might know where that is.
I know it. Yeah, not really well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was legging it down the main street of Longhoughton. My mate shot me in the back with a 2.2 air rifle, and it properly went in. You know, it wasn't. But imagine how dangerous that is in reality. You know, he's shooting down a street at street level. You know, and you think, should they be doing that? What would happen if there was a kid? You know, if there was a pram?
There was a bloke killed. There was a bloke killed with a 2.2 air rifle in Loftus, just down the road from me.
Yeah, I know Loftus.
Someone shot the air rifle out of the window, and you know, I think, might have this wrong, hit him in the jaw or the neck or something, and diverted down and hit some sort of very, very vital thing, and he died. I
take your point, Hugh, about competency, but I think that's a separate issue, if you know what I mean. That's an issue that has to be controlled for in who's teaching the course. You know, that's an approval metric there, because I mean, like Sean said, I mean that's terrifying. Where it's an air rifle pellet that's going in and doing that. But I've seen all sorts of bizarre behavior by projectiles.
Slightly different off the subject, but when I was a kid, I don't think they get away with it now. When I was in the cadets, we went to Belgium.
Yeah.
And they carried out the battle initiation course where they had live firing machine guns, and they would fire 4 foot off of the floor, and you had to crawl up out of the trench and then crawl underneath them. I mean, I was 13 then. And you'd crawl 100 yards, and you'd hear these bullets.
What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, was that a Brecon?
That was in Belgium.
Oh, it was in Belgium. Yeah, no, they do.
It was with the Belgian army.
Set up in Brecon, though. They used to have someone in Brecon.
I don't think at 13 they'd let many cadet. You know, I don't think nowadays that they'd let us participate in that somehow. And they did the one with the tank where they had a bar across the bottom of the tank.
Yeah,
welded on. So, and as the tank came towards you, you had to bend down, grab the bar, and then you let the tank roll over you to get used to tanks. And all the army cadets did it back then, you know, 13, 14. It was like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll have a go. I don't think safeguarding these days would quite cut it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
well,
sorry.
That's a bit. That's coming back to Sean's point earlier about people being fluffy and things. You know, that things have changed and moved on, haven't they? But I think that's moved on across all of the place. But I love that I grew up in a time when that kind of stuff happened. I'm sure you do, Hugh, as well.
Yeah,
I would suspect that a lot of your viewership's probably a bit younger than that. the thought of it would horrify them. If you know what I mean.
So I tell you what, before you go though, there is something I want to get onto. We've done the drones and stuff. The software in the recognition, because I've been quite vocal on this, although I've got pushed on it a bit. I believe that we are getting smart technology wrong in pest control. I truly believe that. We are obsessed with the black box, with using a black box as a monitor and as a killing device and blah, blah, blah. And we put a Reolink in on a bait station, and the information that we got back from the Reolink was like 50 million times more detailed, more impressive on everything that was going on. So your AI stuff or your video thing, can that be pushed over into pest control, whereby we could have a camera that would look at an area, not even necessarily a bait station, but look at an area, pick out what was there, tell us what was there, and provide that report so that we can do our environmental risk assessments properly, that we can do our risk assessments on their own properly, etc., and understand what's going on?
I mean, in theory, yes. It depends on the size of the object it's got to pick up and what it's seeing, if you know what I mean. And it would need some training. But I mean, this is essentially a solved problem for rats and mice. It's then when you come down from that towards the invertebrates that your rats, mice, and birds is a solved problem. It's coming down to invertebrates and being able to do that. But in terms of feasibility, 100%. It's just then comes down to time frame and what the financial incentive is to develop it. You know, what is the marketplace from the pest control perspective in terms of having that technology? I mean, obviously it's a huge time saver, and anyone who's using camera traps on squirrel traps in rural environments will tell you how much time it saves. And New Zealand has proven that as well with DOC. So it comes down to how much time it saves there, and whether the same effects could actually be achieved by some other form of remote monitoring. There's possibly a bit of design work in it, Sean, that you could say, actually, we can detect this with that. I'm being pretty generic here, but you know, we can use this measure to detect that measure. We can use it's essentially the IoT game and being able to fire that in, because we're doing something for someone else, which is actually trap sensors rather than trap cameras. So we're looking at weighted traps and then having that report in, and then only then, when you've got a weighted trap, does it then do the identification. So it doesn't even take a photo until
this is where I can imagine, but this is where I think we're terribly going wrong as an industry. I really do. They're like, you know, it's caught, it's in a trap, great, and it picks it up and it tells you you've caught a rat. But if you're trying to sell a product or a service to someone, if you can put a camera in that says a rat has went through there, like today, you know what to do, you know how to get there. Getting them into boxes isn't always the easiest, because we get them in. This is just my thoughts. Because we get them in, we think that they're going easily. I ask anybody to put a reeling on a box and watch them run around it, run over it, take the, you know, they're not that quick. Like are you going to get crows on there? We've had sparrowhawks tip up on ours within a week. We were absolutely convinced this site was clear of rats. Convinced. Put it on, and sure enough, they're tipping up. Do you know what I mean? And then if you have the ability to recognize that individual rat, you could pick it up on different ones so you can see where it's moving, etc., etc. Like if you are a business, not a pest controller, if you were a business, that's what I want to know that my pest controller is doing, that he understands that rats are moving from here to there, or, you know, you can use it and you can, instead of just that trap killed that rat, like it came from over there, it headed from this direction, it ran off over that direction repeatedly. You know, we're able to respond to it so much faster. And I think pest controllers would get behind it. Agree or not, Hugh?
Well, I did see a camera, I think it was Malaysian or something like that, that actually over repeated nights saw where the rat was running, and then the artificial intelligence took over and said that this tracked it back and said this is the possible area of ingress, and actually tracked it and mapped it back to where the chances are that it was coming in, which was like, whoa, okay, that's pretty cool. So yeah, there were definitely something, cameras rather than just a box, because all a box tells you is that it's in the box. It doesn't tell you where it's come from or anything else.
The cameras are hugely powerful, But it is, as I said, I mean, I think you just said it there, Hugh. It's kind of it is a solved problem with rats and mice. It's definitely something that is, if not doable by us, it's doable by someone. It's doable quickly. As in, this is available. It just comes down to the cost element, the cost implication. You know, how much can you charge the client for cameras?
But when they're saying like AI what is it? The artificial intelligence is doubling every 4 months, then that's there's soon gonna be a camera that can do it, and the price point's going to come down and down and down and down.
No, I can tell you now, there is a camera that can do it. I mean,
okay.
And the price point for that camera is, let's say, 150 quid or thereabouts.
Yeah, winner.
That's what I'm saying. It's a solved, but this is a relatively
Ollie, at the moment they're buying boxes that kill rats for 300 quid.
Yeah, the camera won't kill a rat. It'll take a photo.
No, what I'm saying is, like,
I want to see it with a little gun on the top.
Yeah, oh, have you seen? No, there are some truly terrifying. What you can do with AI and face recognition, and then attach it to Nerf guns on a little. I
saw that.
Yeah. So you can have them smack your son or your friend repeatedly, and only your son or your friend whenever they come into the room. But yeah, so it's definitely a doable thing to have that kind of tracking of rats and mice at that price point.
Is that something that you would be looking into, or is that
something that we're doing?
Off?
I have it's something that we're actually doing at the moment. Is the cameras with the AI recognition of different target species. This is alongside our drones, etc. The ability to trace its path and do that we don't have at the moment, but it's something that we could do. It's not difficult to do, if that makes sense.
Wow.
you're right about the AI doubling rate. Every 4 months, it's doubling the power of the AI, or thereabouts. But that's way beyond that sort of recognition stuff. So the recognition of animal species is quite, that was probably solved 2 or 3 years ago. So the power to do that now is available on your phone type thing. You can get that done on your phone. And the power to then trace paths and persistent routes is something, again, that was done by the Chinese for tracking their people doing the same thing. But that was done, again, a few years ago. So it's the kind of thing that you can have running on relatively small devices or relatively cheaply, and therefore can offer it as a product to the general market, to businesses to buy at this level. Because you're talking about an ongoing subscription then on top of what you actually pay for the camera. So you've got to buy the camera, and then you're going to have to pay, like £20 a month or something similar to then have the subscription where the AI is doing all the tracking and processing all the photos, and that's all being done remotely and then coming in from there. So
would that likely be 4G, or would it be
4G?
Is it LoRa or
LoRaWAN?
LoRa, yeah.
No, it's not. It's very unlikely to be LoRaWAN. You'd do it on 4G unless if you had no cellular connection, then you could do it on LoRaWAN to a rebro to hit 4G. But I can talk in these 3-letter acronyms all day and talk about TCP, IP gateways, and all of that sort of stuff. Basically, it's all the same thing. It's radio to get it back to the internet.
Okay.
But 4G, or you can do it off grid with LoRaWAN, or you can do it off grid with. I know there's a lot of chat about bees, and I won't confess to being a bee expert, but I did do some work back at Track Plus, which was monitoring hives using which were up in the mountains of New Zealand, and we were using iridium connections to get the data back, so over satellite. So even if you want to go that way, you can do it that way.
Wow. How long would you think that that's going to be before that's commercially available? I mean, I know that Rentokil they've already got their AI cameras out. So
so for the general market, aside from Rentokil, I would say if the market demand is there, that could be ready within a month or 2.
Right. Wow.
Yeah. If you wanted one, if you were prepared to pay a premium margin, so if you're prepared to pay, like you said to me after this call, you went, "Oh, I desperately want one of these. I need it in 3 days." I could.
Yeah, no matter how much it costs.
I could. If you said it's, I don't mind paying £1,000, say, or 500 quid. Yeah. I could probably find you one for that. I could probably find you and have you one operational, which gave you all that information to your own website, all of the other stuff within that sort of like a week-long time frame. To have it commercially available as an offer to the pest control industry and then built out so that it's ready to go with the software and everything else like that, I would suspect it'll be this year. But it's at some point this year, and I wouldn't know when, because it's, from our perspective, that's like we're working more and more with the pest control industry. So from our perspective, that's a key part of what we're doing for wanting to do for pest control. And this is all the way from wildlife management down to the rats and mice. Probably not down to the invertebrates this year, but we would be looking to develop some of this stuff and have it ready soon. I do have a pest control customer that is pushing me to have it ready for them this month, and they know that I'm getting samples of them this month. Put it that way. If that makes sense. But that customer is pushy and also willing to work with us on getting it right and getting it ready for them. They know that it's due in this month. Hugh,
is there any?
I was just thinking who it was.
It's wildlife management rather than
right.
pure pest control. But I think the boundaries of them are just they're crossing over so much. Yeah. And I mean that's the big thing with, like, I mean, as I was telling you when we started off this on urban deer, you know, I have a client which is a conglomerate of entities that keep getting us to do urban deer and foxes and things like that. And we are not. They have pest control companies. They have pest control companies that do the bait boxes and things like that. And then they've come to us to do the upper echelon of the I call it upper echelon. It's probably lower echelon. It takes possibly less skill to do that than it does to constantly supply bait boxes and know all the chemical laws, etc. So we're doing deer for them more and more frequently because there's just more and more deer in city centres, which is a damning indictment of where the population sits. But they ask us to do the foxes, and then I think when it got to the foxes, we've actually asked the pest control company that's on site to say, do you not want to do these? And they've said no, nothing with firearms, but then the air rifle stuff, they're handling that type of work. So it's a very blurred boundary between wildlife management and pest control, and I think they're much one and the same thing.
Is there any synergy with you and some of the pest controllers who have firearms now, where if that level of work is starting to come in, where you could subcontract out to lads who are capable or not?
I mean, yes. And I think this comes down to where we talked about mandatory training before. So we have a course that we require people to do before we put them on what we call publicly sensitive sites. And for those, they're not necessarily urban pest control sites. They're more things which there is a high degree of public activity on them. So we have a LandTrack course that they can go on, that they do that. Again, ditching that, so someone else will be delivering that and have that online. And that I view as a precursor to a course on urban deer. The thing that I would say is, if you're doing, I think there's a huge amount of overlap with lads that have centerfire or rimfire experience, where they're looking at the rabbits, the foxes, etc., etc., etc. The thing is, if you're going to do urban deer, then you probably need all of your deer qualifications as well. You need those because of the legal side of it. And I would then go one step further than that and say, I'd really want anyone who was doing that to have done an advanced shooting test. And there isn't one out there. We have one that we generally accept as an advanced shooting test, but I wouldn't employ someone. I wouldn't subcontract someone to shoot centerfires in some of these locations unless I had actually verified and seen them personally shoot, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense, definitely.
There was an equivalent level of qualification, because we'd be putting a lot of risk in that. What there is the opportunity to do is to work together with them, and these are often team jobs, and there's a variety. Everything's on a spectrum. There's a difference between shooting a wayward deer in hospital grounds inside of Oxford, to shooting deer on the outskirts of a city in a suburban environment, to shooting them in a wildlife reserve or a park that's within city limits, if you know what I mean. Everything's a spectrum as to where the risk lies and the skill that's required to then execute it.
I've got a dog willing to travel,
willing to pull them down.
Won't grab kids. See, this is the thing. We've got to go back to the old days. The dog doesn't touch kids, doesn't touch other dogs. It's pretty happy. Yeah, it's pretty quick. I'm only joking, folks. I'm joking. Your dog's old.
You're not getting a reaction, which is interesting.
So your ideal customer then, as a business, what is who?
Our ideal customer requires us to do no work, pays us extremely well.
Thousands,
showers us with champagne and gifts for.
Sounds about right.
Job.
Yeah.
That's the. I mean, all customers are good customers at the end of the day.
Maybe I don't mean ideal. I mean, what sort of people would come to you? What would be your core customer? So,
if we look at the software, then we have essentially three customer groups. One is land agents / forestry agents that are looking to control their clients' grant type stuff. And the other is I would say pest control companies are going to become more and more. We had a lot of interest when we were at PestX, especially around trap tracking. We talked about cameras and the other things, Sean. There's a few different areas where we could work with pest control companies for the software. And the same with the other technology products, drones and cameras. In terms of doing surveys, that's everyone. Again, that is foresters, landowners, land agents, and pest controllers. If you want someone to give you a comprehensive opinion on the ecology or zoology or biology of a site, then we can come and do that. With the doing the work with training, it's just our ideal customers are people that do it online and don't have me travel around the country delivering training courses. With the doing the work, our ideal customers our customer profile would tend to be corporates that are engaging us to do. If people are engaging us to do urban deer management, then they're engaging us to have a survey, have an opinion, give them options around darting, transiting, moving the deer, and then carry out the work effectively without anyone knowing that it's being done. If it's more of the NGO type, non-governmental organisation, charities, or even some of the big private equity firms that are engaging with us to do landscape level deer management.
Hang on a second. Is that because these large financial firms have bought swathes of land for their carbon credits?
And their biodiversity net gain and some grants. Yeah. But it's not. I mean, fundamentally, at the end of the day, the deer need managing at the landscape level, and it hasn't been well done for a long time. And when we're working at the landscape level, and I think Hugh, you asked, and sorry, it was Sean who asked about engaging with subcontractors. If we're working at the landscape level, we will engage with and work with recreational stalkers, with contractors. We will bring in contractors that are going to do the high volume culling. We would generally work with people at the sort of across the entire spectrum in terms of bringing people in to do that kind of job. And I think for pest controllers that have got a license, there is room to get involved in that kind of work with deer in and around city limit type stuff. Again, if they don't have deer qualifications, it's very difficult to justify subcontracting anything without deer qualifications there.
And you would travel the whole of Great Britain for that, would you? That sort of work? We
do travel the whole of Great Britain for that sort of work.
Yeah.
And we use more local team. We've got guys that are more local. So there's not just me and Dean. There's a few other people as well. So we've got guys that are local that will do stuff in different parts of the country.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And fundamentally, this is a bit of a passion project of a business. It's something that we really enjoy. So we're prepared to put in the work around it.
So what's next, as it were? Is the pest control side the next thing, or are you just happy doing?
Sorry, I did a big deep breath in and that sort of cut you off.
Well, actually, Billy asked a question, so.
Oh, sorry.
Do you think deer are being seen more as a pest stroke vermin species than as an asset?
I mean, it's a tricky question. I gave a talk to the BDS, British Deer Society, one of their branches, and I've said this a few times and I think I said this to Basque as well at a couple of their presentations for them. The 15-20 years ago, it was just bad. If you were out murdering Bambi, you were bad. There was no positive side to it. And then Nature Scott and a bunch of other government organisations have been hammering away at deer bad, deer bad, deer bad, deer bad. They're a pest. We need rid of them, and all that sort of stuff. I firmly believe a lot of that, because I know people in those organizations who are relatively sensible and totally understand the ecology and the biology, and they're not idiots. I think a reason that they're saying dear bad, dear bad, dear bad like that is to shift the Overton window over to the right. And I'm not going to do a hands up with who knows what the Overton window is, but I'll let someone Google what the Overton window is. It's basically what's acceptable to say in public. So I think they've just hammered that to make it more acceptable for culling deer, because now I can walk around charity sites and the fact that I'm there culling deer is perfectly acceptable, whereas 10 years ago it wasn't.
But this is what thoroughly annoys me. It absolutely gets my goat, because I'll walk around charity sites and shoot them, but the same charities will bang the drum that it's bad, and there's only one reason to do it: because of finances. They know that they can pull on the heartstrings of people and say, oh, look at them bad buggers shooting fox and shooting deers. And more people will leave them money, more people will donate, and then they're doing it themselves. You know, oh, it's okay because we're trying to save this particular bird. So it's fine for us to do it, but it's not for you. They'll never, ever, ever openly admit that conservation requires this to happen. And worse, they'll actually cover up that they are doing it.
But
just yeah, but this is
just the optics, isn't it?
It's just the human. It's just the. I mean, I agree with you, Sean. I do agree with you. I think, but it's the difficulty of being in that place. So when I was doing my PhD, I had two supervisors. One was Eileen Mill, one was Alistair Ward. I make that sound grander than it was. I haven't finished my PhD, so we'll just cover that one for a bit. But Eileen, and when I was there, Eileen was doing the badger cull. She was the lead scientist on researching for the badger cull. Yeah, and she got bloody hate mail and stuff coming through, and she was like, "This is." And these are the scientists that are organizing this kind of thing, and you couldn't find, like, if you were to Google or get AI to create an image of left-wing conservation-led, then Eileen would be what you came up with. That was what you would see her and you'd go, yeah, left it. But she's there organizing the badger cull, totally understands that it needs doing and all that sort of stuff. She's getting hate mail for it, and the vast majority of people, even huge numbers of people in these organizations, they know what they're doing. They know that it's real. And yeah, there is a bit of two-facedness in terms of, you know, being critical and getting people to donate and all of that sort of stuff. But fundamentally, they need money and they need to be able to do their work. But they are also, at the same time, you know, fairly sensible that it does need to be done. I don't know. Maybe I'm too tough.
They are, which is fine. Go do it. But they are pulling down the people who are also doing it and telling everyone and vilifying them. You know, a very good friend of mine sat on a board with the RSPB, and he said, I've never seen anything like it. He said they would say one thing to a face, then walk out and write an article about it being a bunch of bad bastards. And, you know, seconds later, the same people. And like, what? And we're like, money in it, it's income. Like, when you portray yourself as being virtuously right, and you know, you put yourself in that position of being the person that people should listen to, then there is an inherent responsibility on you to be truthful. And for them to not be truthful because they want money is absolutely sickening, you know.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I do. I think there's also it's a two-way street. I would say there's a two-way street here, in that, and I'm no doubt going to get a lot of slate in the comments here. The shooting community, or the community that's engaged in lethal control, whether that's actually doing it professionally and managing it, or the people that have been involved in shooting, and you know, you're talking about gamekeepers and other stuff here. fundamentally, and I've always, they haven't done themselves any favors with some behaviors and some things that have gone on. So there's bad on both sides of the conversation. Now I keep saying this, and I say it to organizations as well as individuals, that this is a managed, and we come back to where we started really. This is a managed landscape. The UK is a managed landscape, so we need to manage it. Yeah, I've got some great irrefutable links, release proof for simple maths for people if anyone ever wants it, which is why links releases won't work in terms of controlling roe deer populations or deer populations at all, which is great because even the ecologists sort of look at you and go, oh shit, yeah, you are right, that's wrong. We have to shoot deer. There's no way of reducing the deer population down to where it needs to be without shooting them. It can't be done. You know, lynxes can't do it. You can't do anything like that. But if you are engaged in lethal control in managing this landscape, then you need to be a steward of the land. So whilst I agree with you, Sean, that the people that are asking for this money need to be truthful and say right is right and actually tell the truth about it. The people in the shooting communities also need to be truthful and be honest about what they're doing. And if we are being honest about conservation and management of different species, yeah, then the shooting community have not been honest about the deer population. The worst people about the deer population are the shooting community. The problem is that it is a perverse incentive. You know, if you're involved in shooting deer commercially, then you're doing one of three things. You're either guiding, or you're doing contracting, or you're doing some, you know, you're involved in some kind of syndicate type thing, or you're listing syndicates. Yeah. Unless you're culling deer under contract, then your primary aim is to have as many deer as you can on that ground, because that maximizes your income. And the shooting community are incredibly dishonest about that. You know, there are lots of people saying, lots of well-recognized guides, people that are trainers or assessors for DMQ stuff, that are guides, that are saying that they practice sustainable deer management, and they don't. That's an absolute fucking lie. What they do is they have as many deer as they can on that ground, because it's in their financial interest to be able to take a guest and have them shoot a deer every time they go, take people out and them see deer every time, and they're praised for having good ground where there's lots of deer. But that's not in the interests of managing the land. That is in the interest, or the interest of managing the deer, or in the interest of managing the ecology. And so I do agree with you about.
I agree, but I've never seen them like actually attack the other side, if that makes sense. The attack comes solely, in my personal experience, from your RSPB, RSPA, all them people. It just flows in one direction, and it's lies about that individual. And there's a difference between saying, listen, this is sustainable management, and they've got loads of deer on there, and they could probably take more, but they don't, and blah, blah, blah. There's a big difference between that and saying, we think this is disgusting and you should not be killing deer, then walking out and walloping 50, herding them up with helicopters like they were doing, breaking the law and dropping them, and then absolutely lying through their back teeth and going, please give us some donations because these people here are bad. The shooting industry is pretty well, it's funded internally from themselves. And from what I've seen, they often put lots and lots of money into those communities where they're in. Whereas the RSPB, RSPA, all them boys, they just take. They're a charity that takes. They go in and they take and they take and they take. And they absolutely vilify people who are doing exactly the same as them. Do you know what I mean? And I just think it's disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, I get where you're coming from. As I said, I mean, I do agree with what you're saying. I think that the problem is, like with all things, like with everything, is that why is your internet suddenly improved? Like now we can see you. So for the entire call, you've been a shadow, a blur. Yeah. Oh no, I've spoken to be blurry again.
That's gone.
the noise comes from both sides, and it comes from the extreme end of both sides. Fundamentally, 80% of the population probably agree or are close to agreeing on a spectrum. I mean, I'm on the climate site at the moment, and there's a guy here. He really is. He has a unit next to we have a venison processing unit here, and so he rents the unit just over the road from our venison processing, and he doesn't like to walk past or come past when the deer are hanging up. He doesn't like to see them, or heads in a bucket or something like that. He doesn't like to see that. But at the same time, and his view is, I just don't want to see it. Don't want to see it. But I'll have some venison, and I want a head, and I want antlers to put on the wall, and I want this, and I want that, and we're very different ends of the spectrum. He's like, I don't know how you can do it. I don't know how you can kill them. But he absolutely agrees and understands with why they're being killed. And I think that in reality, as I said, I think a huge proportion of the population, including the people that are members of these organizations and the people in these organizations, generally agree. It's the extremes at either end that are busy causing trouble and shouting. And I know you're saying, that the extremes. The difference is the extremes with the RSPB and other people like that have
every single member.
Community.
It's every single member.
What of what of our RSPB?
The RSPCA, blah blah blah. All of their people are absolutely. I've never met one of them who isn't the two-faced person that I talk about. They're all the same. They either live in cloud cuckoo land because they don't, and you'll say to them like, "You shoot foxes," and they go, "No, we don't. No, we don't." And they're absolutely zealot and won't have it, or they do it, and they're just the whole lot of them. The whole lot of them. It's just instilled into them to be like that. You can't talk to them. There's no reckoning with them. Like, they just won't have it. They hate everything that the shooting community stands for. They hate it, but they do exactly the same themselves because it's in their interest.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you. I'm brought to mind of there's a comment there from Billy about the Highland clearances, which I'll come back to in a second. But I had a conversation with so sea turtles. The sea turtles. Remember the sea turtles? Lots of people used to go on gap years to go and save the sea turtles. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Back when we were young, you. Yeah. Right. So sea turtles. If you're going to model sea turtle populations, then you model them on a matrix basis. Doesn't follow. You don't use it like you normally would with a curve model population. You're not using statistical models. What you do to model sea turtle populations is use a matrix model. And when you model that out and you look at the population falls and how it works, basically what falls out the bottom of it is protecting sea turtle beaches makes zero difference to the sea turtle population. None. Statistically, nothing. You could protect every single sea turtle beach in the world and it will not impact their population in any way, positive or negative. Because all the sea turtles die when they are between 1 and 2 years old, and they are the perfect size to fit into fishing nets. And they all get caught. And what's worse is, they don't get caught by the big trawlers, the big industrial lot that are catching loads of fish that we all eat. They get caught by the small local fishermen. And so if you want to save the sea turtle population, you shut down small local craft fishing. Can you imagine how popular that message was with the green-haired ones and all of that sort of thing? And as a zoologist, I'm sat there having this conversation with an ecologist and explaining this to her, and she's calling me all the names under the sun. Like, you're violent. She called me a Nazi at one stage because I was suggesting that.
A lot of that going around, mind.
Yeah.
But the simple thing is that the data and maths trump all of those arguments. But you're never going to persuade someone who's going to just scream at you. You're never going to, and you are going to have within organizations where there's conservation, you are going to have a large vocal minority that are going to make that noise. I don't think you can tar everyone with the same brush. That's a member.
We can.
Yeah, we can. Just done it for like 10 minutes, and I'll do it for another 10 minutes. It's all the same. I hate them all.
On that subject,
yeah,
we've got to wrap it up.
Yeah,
we're there on 1:30 now. We're trying to keep the 1:30. Hugh shout. Me and Alex go over and we get messages. You're going over.
I'm going to say it's been an.
I could continue
because 99 times out of 100, I am the outspoken voice on the call, giving it. No, they're all in it.
If I don't stick to what I say, it's going to be lost. So it is 1 hour 30. So I got to. We could go on, but I've got to stick with it.
Come on then. Right. Let's jump to. Hang on a second. Got 3 questions. Have you enjoyed your time on our podcast?
I have had a whale of a time, Sean. Thank you, and Hugh as well. It's been really good.
You're welcome. Come on then. Give us a bit of a shameless plug.
For you guys or for me?
No. For anything that you want to give a shameless plug. Not for us. We don't need. Well,
to find out any more about any of this stuff, please go to www.wildtrackpro.com. And if you want to buy some venison, go to greyghostvenison.co.uk. And there's subscription boxes there where we will post you venison every month. And you can see where it's come from. You get a unique rub tin every month and a bunch of recipes for the different venison cuts. Different species, all of the different stuff there. greyghostvenison.co.uk.
You do like a bit of venison now and again. Must admit.
Brilliant. You get it done properly as well. That's the thing. I used to think that I could cook and butcher deer, and I can't. And we've got young Phil, who's come from a cooking background, and he makes it very clear how badly I've been butchering the deer when I've been butchering deer for the last 30 years.
Awesome. And who would you like to see on the podcast?
Who would I like to see on the podcast?
Yeah.
I would like to see.
In reality, can't have Elon Musk.
PB come on to the book. I am going to find a couple of people for you to talk to from a couple of these charities, and then see whether we can get that on and have a sensible. I'll have a little dig around, and then see who I can find who'd come and talk to you. Yeah. I've worked with a former director of one of those charities, main board director with an OBE, who is a vegan. No, it's a vegetarian, and who has shot more deer than anyone on this call.
But has he caught as many with dogs? That's what I want to know.
Oh no, I'll have a dig around. But it'd be a real pleasure, Sean. Thank you. Thank you. It's been
right.
God bless.
On that note, have you got anything else to add, Sean?
Yeah.
In your
we'll hang around at the end, and we'll
hang around and chat.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to share, like, and follow. Take care.
God bless.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.